So hi everyone. I've got a presentation today. It's one that I gave at work, but I thought the group is a good place to represent it. It was presented in October last year for Mental Health Month, and we might just do it again here because I think you may get something out of it. So some of this may be obvious, some of it may not, but let's go through it. So who are the caregivers? Now, obviously, everyone in this group is a caregiver of some sort. There are formal and informal caregivers. So the formal caregivers are usually the people that are getting paid in some capacity to be a caregiver. I guess I am both a formal and an informal caregiver. So informal caregivers such as family members, husbands, wives, children, brothers, sisters, can be full-time, part-time, or occasional caregivers. Majority of us tend to be full-time caregivers, and part-time, usually it's an extended family member or another member of the family that come in and offer some respite. And the occasional caregivers might just be a neighbour who pops in with a meal here and there. Crisis caregivers are the ones that we call when things have all sort of gone off the rails. So crisis caregivers are usually only there in moments of emergencies. Sometimes, when you put emergency contacts or next of kin on medical records, they might be a crisis caregiver. We won't go through too many of them. I doubt anyone here is a long distance carer. Future caregivers is an interesting one, and these are people that perhaps we nominate in an advanced directive when we know that we perhaps are going to be unwell in the future or suffer from an illness such as dementia, where we're unlikely to be able to care for ourselves. And we discuss and nominate a caregiver in advance of that situation. So this is a question that I want to just sort of pose to you and get you to consider right now. What does caring mean to you? Now, if I was sitting in front of you and asking you this question, what kind of words would you say? What does it mean to you? So everyone effectively will have a different answer. Strong, resilient, steadfast, compassionate, helpful, responsive, dedicated, the list goes on. I wonder if there are any in that list that might be similar to how you define caregiving. For me, selfless is perhaps one. I think to be caring for someone else and putting their needs at sometimes above and beyond your own is a very selfless act, and it does take a lot of courage. I liked this definition. Caring is being there even when you want to be somewhere else. And ain't that the truth? You are there through thick and thin. And there's times where, there's probably a million places you'd rather be, but when it comes down to it, by your loved one's side is really the only option for you. So the one thing caregivers often forget is themselves, of course. We do tend to put ourselves last, don't we? And this is a little analogy that I think makes a lot of sense in caregiving. If you've ever been on a flight, an airplane, you will have the air host or hostess giving you that little spiel before the flight, letting you know to place or in the event of emergency, place the oxygen mask on yourself first before attempting to help small children or others who may need your assistance. And the reasoning for that is if you're unable to breathe, then you're going to pass out and you're going to be ineffective. You're not going to be able to help anyone around you. So it only takes a moment to put the oxygen mask on yourself, and then you are equipped to provide the care to others. And it is very much the same in caregiving. We need to apply that oxygen mask, that metaphorical oxygen mask on ourselves first. We seldom do it, do we? Me first. Well, why? Savage and Bailey 2004 is the reference here, and it's about reducing what we call caregiver burden. You may also know this as caregiver stress or caregiver fatigue. And caregiver burden is pretty much when you are burnt out, when your tank is so empty, so depleted and exhausted that you do not have the resources to give yourself to anyone else. and it's associated with increased mental health problems. And primarily, we see a presentation of depression, anxiety, and increased stress when someone is experiencing caregiver burden. It's also associated with increased physical problems. So we'll see an increase in chronic disease and disorders, mortality, and hospitalizations. Caregiver burden is associated with a less a, a decreased sense of life satisfaction, less positive affect, social isolation, and increases in anger and resentment. And actually, there is a study, a fairly recent study, only in the last year or two, that showed how caregivers are at quite an increased rate of homicidal ideation. Now, that doesn't mean they go around killing people, but it means that that thought crosses their mind. And whether that thought is because you are thinking about the distress and the suffering of your loved one and wanting to put them out of that, or whether it's just a feeling of, I can't manage anymore, I can't cope, look what they're doing to me. But it's a scary study, but you know, if we're honest with ourselves, I'm sure at times those kind of thoughts, perhaps not to the extent of being homicidal, but just not being able to manage anymore, wishing it all would end, something we've all experienced. So what are the signs of caregiver burden, and do any of these apply to you? So let's go down this checklist and tick them off. If these apply to you, the more ticks you get, the more likely you are suffering from caregiver burden, and that puts you at an increased risk of mental illness and mortality and your own physical problems. So let's see what we've got. Difficulty concentrating. Yeah, that would be me at times. Feeling tired and run down. Yeah, I can say I have experienced that quite frequently at times. Definitely, I have trouble sleeping, a bit of an insomniac. Irritability or impatience. I don't like to admit it, but tick. Cutting back on leisure activities. Well, what are they? To be honest, I pretty much don't have any leisure activities. Neglecting other responsibilities. Well, yeah, if you could see my house, I have piles of washing, vacuuming that hasn't been done, general cleaning, which just seems, it just doesn't seem like a priority when you're caregiving. No energy or less energy than before, feeling overwhelmed, can't relax or wind down. And that's a telltale sign of stress, isn't it? When you've got an opportunity to sit down, maybe watch a movie or do something for yourself, and you just can't. You can't sit still. You're too fidgety, or your mind is elsewhere. Definitely something that I can say I experience too. Always thinking ahead to what must be done, which I think I just mentioned, sort of relates to not being able to turn off, to wind down, to let your mind relax. Headaches, digestion problems, low immunity, so you're susceptible to colds and flus and other sorts of common infections. And caregiving is pretty much taking over your own life. Now, I don't want to assume anything, but I'm guessing a lot of us in this group can relate to most, if not all, of those symptoms of caregiver burden. We won't go over this, but there are tests if you're interested in taking a standardized test and having a look at your own score. You could Google the Zarit Burden Interview, and that is a 22-item Likert scale survey, and it interprets your score as to the level of burden. So from little to no burden to quite severe burden. But just by looking at those symptoms on that previous page, you perhaps can have an idea of where you might sit on that burden trajectory. So how to avoid burning out? Well, by putting on your oxygen mask first. It is okay to look after you, and you needn't feel guilty about it, which I think is something we tend to do. If we take a little bit of time out, we feel like it's non-productive time and we should be doing something, or, you know, caring for someone else. But you need to put on that oxygen mask. So take some time out, find the activities that you enjoy and invest, even if it's just 20 minutes a day, doing something for you. So how can you put yourself first? Ask yourself, what were those things that used to bring you pleasure? And what are those things that you've stopped doing because of your caregiving role that you used to do? Who are the people that you can talk with? And I know there's people I can talk with and there's people I can't talk to at all. So identify the ones that you can talk with, even if it's the people in this group. What helps you to relax? Well, I love a good massage. Pardon me. So scheduling time to go and have a massage is something I could do. For others, it might be, a walk on the beach or a nice, warm, relaxing bath. Knowing where you can go for help. So when the burden is getting to the point that you're experiencing clinical symptoms and you are starting to feel depressed or anxious or very stressed, then knowing where you can go for help. And if you don't know, please ask me. I'm more than happy to give you lots of contact numbers. I know a lot in Sydney, if not Australia. Outside this country, perhaps you're probably better equipped to put it in Google. Google's fabulous for these sorts of things and access these resources. Recognizing those burnout symptoms that we just went through. And when you are starting to feel fatigued and starting to feel some of the emotional consequences like the guilt and the resentment or the anger, act. Don't wait for it to get worse. Preventative measures are better than ones where you're trying to cure a problem later on. So get in first, get in early. And tell yourself that you're doing the best under the circumstances. And that's all you can ever do. Don't have unrealistic expectations of yourself. Don't have such a high standard of perfection because it is unattainable. Show yourself some compassion. You're very good at showing it to others. So show it to yourself and tell yourself, I'm doing okay. Even on the bad days, shake off the dust. It was a moment, it's past, move on. And give yourself permission to look after you. Don't find excuses to put it off. It's okay. And actually, it's critical that you look after you first. There's some great resources that I'm happy to help you with. This is a good one when you are caring for someone and you're lacking ideas, how to stimulate them, how to keep them engaged. This book by Marcy M. Jones, Bring Back the Fun, has lots of ideas, creative ideas and activities that you can personally engage in with your loved one with dementia. And there's some examples there. I probably won't go through these. In fact, I think it's probably best that I create some new videos and go through some strategies. So these are the clinical strategies that we know are effective in reducing stress and anxiety and keeping depression at bay. Particularly with anxiety, which I'm very guilty of. I'm a very anxious person. So scheduling worry time, it's like putting aside time to worry. Being told don't worry isn't going to work. And, if I could have $1 for every time someone has said, just don't worry or you worry too much. Well, yeah, that's the idea. I don't want to worry. But when you are a natural worrier, you're going to do it. So scheduling worry time is like allowing yourself 10 minutes a day. And you do all your worry in that 10 minutes. And you can have a worry chair. And that's the chair you sit in to worry. And you're only allowed to sit in that for 10 minutes. You can write your worries down. And then after the 10 minutes, you can screw the paper up, throw it away. But it's about acknowledging that worry is something that you're going to do and being a bit more realistic about it. So rather than saying, don't worry, I'll worry, but I'll worry in my worry time. Mindfulness is something that I promote and talk about a lot, and I will make a video completely on mindfulness. In fact, I did do one recently, and I might upload that soon. Relaxed or controlled breathing, very important to slowing down that visceral response that our bodies have in response to anxiety-inducing thoughts. So just a thought on its own can cause us to become quite tense, our heart to race, sweaty, clammy, our pupils to dilate, and it can create that physical anxious response. So by learning how to breathe correctly, we can take control of that physical response to anxiety, which is really scary. If you've ever felt it, you feel like you're having a heart attack or you feel like you're going to pass out. You actually believe in that moment that something is physically wrong with you. So being able to use controlled breathing is really important and also very effective at reducing that visceral response. Progressive muscle relaxation, that's learning the difference between a state of tension and a state of relaxation. So through providing instruction and demonstration in muscle contrast, we can learn to, again, get control of our bodies. Self-compassion, we mentioned that in an earlier slide, but that's having the same kind of warm, kind, empathic thoughts that you often share and give generously to others, but giving it to yourself. And in the files section, you'll see a study that I completed with some colleagues and showing just how effective self-compassion is as a clinical tool. So it can, and we've shown through our results that it in itself can reduce anxiety and depression. Relaxation, meditation and mantras, fabulous, and some people practice this quite regularly. Distraction is a good one. So when you are starting to feel anxious, engage in an activity or something pleasurable that distracts you from those negative thoughts. Visualization. I think visualization is great, but I do think it's quite a skill. So it's something that you need to learn and rehearse. I often use visualization, particularly at night when I find it difficult to get to sleep, and it works quite well for me. Certainly just as effective as, 5 milligrams of Valium or something. So definitely visualization, much better method than medication. Laughter or crying therapies. I'm not so much into these ones, but some people think they work. The rationale behind them is that they release endorphins, and also laughter is quite a contagious behavior. So if someone's laughing a lot, you tend to naturally smile. If people around you are happy, you're more likely to feel a little bit of happiness. And the same with music and movement. It can induce relaxation and positive emotion. So perhaps I'll make videos on each of these and upload those soon, so you've got an idea of how these techniques work and an opportunity to practice them in your own life. This is a fabulous little video, but I don't know if it's going to work. Let's see. Hold on, let's pause that for a second. I don't think you can hear it. Let me just turn up that volume, because it is quite a cute video. Sorry. All right, let's try again. Anyway, that was just a video of a guy letting loose, an older man on crutches, and he throws the crutches away and he dances to the music, and it is a bit like that. You've probably heard that expression, dance like no one is watching, and that's part of taking care of yourself. Anyway, that's it for now. I do hope this has been a little bit useful, and I wish you all a very happy, peace-filled day and look forward to hearing from you very soon. Bye.